Hello everybody, it's been a while since the last review I put up because things have been a little bit busy. I've got a few recorded but I didn't get around to uploading them. So I'm going to upload this one first because it's the most recent and then just do some of the backlog later. At some point in the future I'll be looking at this, the Age 1 Razor. It's a conversion kit for a kit I don't actually have, so I have to get the Age 1 normal and then apply the razor parts to it. So I should be doing that when I have the Age 1 normal, but for now we'll be looking at this, which a friend of mine sent me as a souvenir from his trip to Japan. So box is a little bit battered from having sat in his bag for a week and having spent about a month in the postal system, but now it's here. It's a big shiny slab of a box, most wonderful gift. It is the real grade Zaku 2. It's Char's version because it's all red. We've got a nice CG image on the front along with a picture of the kit with all of the decals and whatnot applied. A little bit of blurb about the real grade brand. Fine details are reproduced along with abundant coloured parts. We've got some picture on the side of the inner frame of the kit. So these things are 1 to 144 scale, like high grades, but they have an inner frame, sort of like a master grade, which is interesting. Just showing off the joints there, and the transfers. There's lots and lots of teeny tiny little stickers on these things. I've got a real grade Gundam at home, so I only put about half the stickers on that. Kenneth paid about 2,625 yen for this. Some pictures of it posing, and the CG shot. So without further ado, let's crack this open and look at what's inside. That's just the wind blowing my door open and freaking me out. Anyway, this is the manual. Got that same lovely CG shot on the front. Inside, pictures of the kit, pictures of the frame again. These little bits are for the tubes that you see on the Zaku's head and waist. I believe they have little springs which you then fit all of these little plastic loops onto to make the piping. There's a paint guide down the bottom. There it is. For if you want to paint it in the accurate colours, and for if you want to paint the tiny pilot figure of the red comet Char himself. There's a guide to applying the teeny tiny transfers and how to pop the frame off the screw and assemble it. A list of all the parts and a little thing for ordering extra bits if you lose any of them. The assembly instructions for these are pretty good because they have the bits that you've already worked on in grey and only the parts which you're actually working on now are bolded, and you'll have little pink highlights for all of the tabs and the tabs and slots that you'll be using for that stage of the assembly. More of the same. Some technical details in the middle with photos of the Zaku's weapons. Little pictures of the various detail parts on the kit. And these are quite nice. These are illustrations of the Zaku being worked on in a hangar. So you'll have a little exploded view of the arm, crew members floating around it, with the pilot getting in. It's nice, I appreciate little details like that. Make it seem more realistic, for want of a better word. Then the assembly instructions continue, and continue, and continue some more. The last one of these I did, the Gundam, took a couple of afternoons to do. I can usually do a high grade in an evening, but this will have to be 2 sittings or an entire day on it. And finally, a full colour guide for where to place the many stickers. Many tiny stickers. Moving on, we've got several little bags of frames here. There's the stickers. You can't even see most of them on the camera. It's the little white things next to all of these grey circles are just the numbers, and there's little barely visible white decals next to them. They'll show up a lot better on the red plastic than they do on camera. First frame, got a nice dark, almost maroonish red for the main body parts, and a paler kind of a, it's like a pinky, kind of a pinky salmon-y, I don't know, and a bright red bit for the backpack. That's like a really, it's quite a bold red that isn't showing up too well on my camera. And the pilot, in his 1:1 44 scale glory, looking very tiny. Second baggie. Ooh. 2 more frames of, that's a different pinky red to the other pinky red. This is more of a, it looks delicious. It's kind of like a fish-like colour. Definitely more of a salmon than this was. I don't know. I'm meant to be an art student. I should know the names for all the different kinds of red that's on this thing, but there's about 3 or 4 kinds of red, and I don't know what they're all called. So I give up. Dark grey for some of the mechanical parts and the weapons. You can see his little axe there. Bazooka bits. More mechanical parts. I think, are these going to be some of the tubes? Not quite sure. Don't entirely know what those bits are, or shall become clear, I imagine. Bag the fourth. Part of the inner frame bits. What's cool about these is that some of them are articulated right on the frame, so there's the ball socket for the wrist, and I haven't even popped it off the frame or assembled it yet. There'll be hinges in the feet here, elbows, waist bits. They managed to cast them on the frame with all the joints working, which is very impressive, very intricate. I should mention this is slightly more rubbery plastic than the others so far. Thank you, the fifth. Double. Come on, you. More of that delicious looking fish pink here. There's some of the external armour parts. That will mostly be used on the limbs, whereas the darker maroon is the main body. And a lighter grey than we had previously for more of the, some of these are inner frame parts, some of these are mechanical detail parts. Part of the weapons here, and part of the backpack there, parts of the joints in here. And finally, last but not least, more delicious pink with all of these little bits. Remember, these are the little plastic segments for the sectioned tubes that'll go around the Zaku's head and waist and legs. Little spikes for the shoulder, and there's a shoulder pad part there, and the shield. And the last thing, this tiny little yellow bag with 2 springs in it. So I guess 2 of the tubes will be using the springs and the rest will be using those long grey parts that I wasn't sure what they were. I think these will be the head ones. Oh no, maybe these will be the knee ones. It makes sense for them to be flexible, wouldn't it? Okay. Well, that's all the parts on the frame. I'll begin the painstaking process of assembling it bit by tiny bit, and I shall come back to you when that's done. The lighting's not quite as good since I've gone to work, come back, and it's now the evening. But this is the inner frame of the Zaku, all made. As you can see, it's covered in all sorts of pegs and hinges and wrinkly bits and whatnot. And it's got movable fingers and joints. Of course it's got movable joints, I guess that's the whole idea. Yeah, and bits of it slide about when you move the joints. So there's this piece here on the thigh, sort of expands and collapses. That'll move the thigh armour as the knee moves, and ooh, that's popped off. And there's a bit that does similar on the knee. That'll move the knee plate about, and the feet are all wiggly. You've got a multi-jointed waist, so you can do all sorts of moves. So this thing's incredibly limber, and we shall have to see how limber it is with the armour applied.